Today's video is a retrospective on Legend of Mana. It's my first video not talking about Zelda, and with the release of the HD remaster earlier this week, it seemed like a good time to shift gears. Don't worry though, I'll be back to Zelda topics next week. This game just has a special spot in my heart. So without any further delay, I'm Cornelius Belmont, and let's talk about the Legend of Mana. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe to see more of it. Thanks to these people for letting me use their assets. Let's get into it. There's something about Legend of Mana that you don't find in many other games. It's probably related to the approach Square was taking with their series in the late 90s, where they were just throwing everything against the wall to see what would stick. Legend of Mana was very much one of those games, and for whatever reason, it stuck. Don't get me wrong, it isn't without its flaws. No matter how much nostalgia clogs your vision, none of the games that Square put out at this time were perfect. The combination of things that really made it shine for me were the beautiful painted backgrounds that weren't afraid to embrace desaturated pastel colors. I also loved the effects at play when you were placing artifacts, as the visual effects remind me so much of the effects from Final Fantasy Tactics. And of course, I have to mention the beautiful music. Some of these songs have been on my playlist for over 20 years, from back then on Winamp to today on Spotify. The story, or rather stories of the game, are interesting as well. The game isn't afraid to bring up complicated topics that are morally unclear. In fact, the three major stories of the game all have some shades of gray to it. Before I get into that though, let's clean house on the topic of game mechanics and the muddy nature of them in the game. Building the world map is an interesting concept, and I like the idea how mana levels affect the aspects of the various locations. Unfortunately, this doesn't actually do much other than influence which spirits spawn there, and maybe have an effect on elemental damage in the area. I haven't looked into those game mechanics specifically, but I'm sure that they have been meticulously dissected on GameFAQs. Building the map itself is always fun. For me personally, I like to try to include an island on the map. That way I have to strategically build my path out to it with careful artifact placement. There really needed to be some adjustments to learning skills in this game though. More or less, there are skills that you could equip that will combine together to make more advanced skills, like crouch and jump that would eventually teach you high jump. Trying to get characters to actually learn new skills, however, was pretty aggravating, because as far as I know, there is no way to check the progress towards a new skill. Maybe they will add a feature like that as I am recording this before playing the new HD version. But I have a feeling it's just going to be an upsampled version of the game with anime cutscenes. Your super techniques are all based on the skill thing too, but using weapons. And as such, it just comes across as completely random as to when you learn new stuff. Fortunately though, the game is really easy and mastery over its battle mechanics is absolutely not needed. The last system I'll touch on is very much a love-hate relationship for me, and that is blacksmithing. I spent so much time doing this, because I wanted to make a good version of every type of weapon. I also loved finding various combinations, and seeing the various art on the cards that would pop up. I'm really looking forward to ripping those HD graphics. It's unfortunate that even minor amounts of smithing pretty much destroys any challenge in the game. With that said, let's move on to the most interesting part of the game is that unlike the previous three that came before it, this one takes place before the Mana Tree's rebirth into the world. See, in the previous games, the tree is always destroyed due to mankind abusing its power, often with them fighting with each other over who gets to exploit it. The tree is supposedly a limitless source of power, and as such it would bless the world and make everybody happy. It is your character who is in a position to bring the Mana Tree back into the world. And so, instead of striking down an evil empire, you end up going around trying to make everybody happy, solve problems, and make the world worthy of the Mana Tree. While there are many side quests in the game about helping various characters, like giving a home to Bud and Lisa, the capital exploits of the world's worst rabbit, or the lovesick adventures of one incredibly horny bard, there are 3 main quests that play into the larger role of the world. These 3 focus on the downfall of a mysterious civilization made up of living gem people called the Jumi, the resurrection of a past tyrant who happens to be one of the villains from the previous game, or my personal favorite, the love story of a priestess and a demon who can't escape their destinies. Each one of these stories adds so much to the world, and the characters feel really fleshed out. I can understand Elazul's frustration as a Jumi knight, and I understand Sandra's motives with her actions. While I don't agree with him, I understand Lark's reasoning for the things he is doing. I'd say the acceptance that Matilda shows for Erwin despite everything he is doing is the one that impacted me most growing up. In each one of these, your character, who is unknowingly a candidate to become the Mana Knight, steps in to save the day. Any one labor alone would qualify you for the title, giving you the means to bring the Mana Tree back into the world. One of my favorite parts of the game is the argument that you witness with Nunazak and Pokiel, and the merits of bringing the tree back into the world. It was so nice to see a discussion like this take place, and a consideration of consequences for the actions you were about to take. Aspects of Legend of Mana continue to appear throughout the series, especially in the remakes of older games. In Sword of Mana, a Game Boy Advance reimagining of the first game, characters and aspects of Legend of Mana make appearances. Most notably, the 7 Wisdoms were made into summon effects, with Erwin being made into an 8th Dark One used by the game's final boss. In the 3D remake of Secret of Mana, there are references in the form of artwork displayed in some houses. Fittingly, even a picture of Niccolo at Neko's home. It really is no surprise that the series peaked with Secret of Mana back on the Super Nintendo, at least here in the West anyways. Seiken Densetsu 3, which was near completion with its translation, didn't see any official release outside of Japan until 20 years later. While the game looked amazing on the SNES, it just came out too late in the life cycle of the console for Squaresoft to see it as viable, which was a real shame. That outcome probably caused Legend of Mana to underperform in the Western market. Years later, Seiken Densetsu 4 would come out in the West as part of the World of Mana series. Each game in this series underperformed, causing the series to go dormant, until just a few years ago with the Secret of Mana remake. At this point moving forward, I'm skeptical there could be a strong revival of the series. It is a cult classic, and while I am absolutely thrilled about the Legend of Mana remake, the truth of the matter is that my nostalgia for the game is what motivated me to get it, and ultimately to make this video. Still, it is a game that affected my development as a teenager, and I dare say that without its influence, I would not be the person I am today. The Legend of Mana was created during a time when Squaresoft was trying a lot of different mechanics with their games, and this game suffers from that. While many of its mechanics are dubious, the art style, music, and story presented are magnificent. It manages to tell a compelling story where characters have depth to them, making it easy to sympathize with each of them. Well, most of them. The success of the game was hampered by the decision to hold back Seiken Densetsu 3 from a Western release, despite the translation being nearly done. Due to this, the spotlight began to drift from the series, so by the time Legend of Mana came out, it didn't have a strong fan base. Years later, the series would try to sprout out once again, but the new direction of the properties and the dwindling fanbase from the Secret of Mana days served to cause this tree to go dormant. Only recently with the remakes of their golden titles has the series been able to recover some. However, it seems unlikely that any future titles will blossom in the future. Thank you guys for watching the episode. For the time being, I'm going to continue to focus on Zelda theories. But I'm beginning to plan out some Square Enix related theories for the future. If you enjoy my content, please give the video a like and subscribe. That would really mean a lot to me, and it helps the channel grow. See you next time. This is Cornelius Belmont signing out.